Okay, I have 12 noon. Let's get started with today's webinar. I'm Peggy West. I'm your organizer. And today I'm going to introduce to you a speaker on a class called Building and Structures Restoration as it relates to your budget. This is for your CAMs out there, a 1-hour OPP credit that you can use for your license if you need it for the end of this year or September. Uh, First, I want to say I think we should take a minute as we get started and a moment to pause to remember our heroes. These are those that lost their lives when we were attacked in 9/11. So God rest their souls, and let's just take a minute. Okay, let's get into a quick housekeeping review. Some of you have been on my webinars before, but like I said, the CAM credit will be processed before September 30th, but please allow 2 to 3 weeks to get that processed and DBPR to post it. The Q&A section is for questions from the audience, not the chat. Q&A is for questions from the audience and put in the chat, and the sponsors might do this. Any comments or your sponsor information, your name, your company, your phone number, your email would be recommended. Okay, this is being recorded, and at the end of the webinar, I'm going to be sending you out a sponsor sheet along with a recording. And the sponsor sheet will have everybody's name and contact information for the class today. And also have their logo and their email address. So you don't have to write all this down. I'll be sending it out to you. I always like to commend the board members on today's webinar attendance because I know you're volunteers, and this is very commendable for your community's education and furthering your fiduciary responsibilities with knowledge. So I hope you enjoy the class and get a lot out of it. I will be hosting, just so you know, board member classes in the near future. This is for the new requirements by the law for 4-hour credits. I'm working with a couple different attorneys, and I'll try to do them a couple times. I'm also going to try to have one in Spanish. So look for the upcoming webinar flyers. I want to thank the CAMs as well. And I want to say good luck and all the best in the upcoming season, and also as you renew your licenses. So if you need help with that, give me a call. I may be able to find another webinar for you, and I'll be glad to help in any way. Lastly, and not least, I want to thank my sponsors for today. These are the ones that have invited you to the class. So let's get started with who these sponsors are. First, I want to introduce Vinteum Software. We have on the face-to-face here, Katie with Vinteum. She's the National Sales Manager. Vinteum, tell us about yourself. Or Katie, tell us about yourself and Vinteum.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that intro, Peggy. As Peggy mentioned, I work with Vinteum, so I work with companies and communities across the U.S., although we do have a particular focus in Florida. Vinteum supports Neigbrs, which is an all-in-one HOA and condo management platform. So we do everything we can to improve communication and transparency for community associations. Today, I just want to mention a special material that I will be sending out after the webinar. It is a preventative maintenance checklist. It's designed to help board members and property managers implement a comprehensive preventative maintenance plan. The kit has an ebook, so look out for that follow-up information here. And if you are interested in learning more about Neighbors or getting a live demo scheduled, please give me a call or reach out via email.
Okay, and just to reiterate, the law changes from July is requiring anyone with 25 units or more to have a website. So excellent source here, and that's why I'm working with them, called Vinteum. Next, I want to introduce Daniel Baum. He is the CEO and founder of COA Solutions of Florida. He's also today's moderator. Daniel, tell us about yourself and your company and what you're doing. You're doing different things.
Hi, Peggy. Thank you so much for the introduction. Hi, everyone. Thank you for taking the time out of your Wednesday to join us. As Peggy mentioned, I'll be moderating today's webinar. A little about myself. Very simply, I look at my responsibility to my communities to save you all money on your property and casualty insurance. we're all in budget season right now. That's the call that I get every single day now is what can we expect for our budget for next year? And of course, nobody wants to hear about an increase. Everybody would like it to be decreasing. So I work with communities very closely. We look very closely at documentation, especially wind mitigation reports, look at roof to wall connections, go through and detail your appraisals, and try to find ways to advise our clients on how they can reduce the cost of their property insurance. Just a quick note, last month we were actually able to find for a client savings of over $300,000 on their property insurance because of errors that they had for several years that they had been overpaying for. So there are ways, obviously you want to check and make sure everything looks right, but you also want to check and see what proactive steps you can take. And that's what I try to do. Every year, look for my clients, try to save money on property insurance.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Next, I want to introduce Ben Friedman. He is the president at City Quiet Windows and Doors. He's not on today. I'm sure he had an appointment, and being the president, he had probably had some great meetings to go to, but very active in homeowner associations and condo associations, and great source if you need windows and doors. Next, I want to introduce the audit principal at Hafer Company, Mark Landis. Mark, tell us about yourself and what you're doing over there.
Hey, it's Mark Landis, principal over at Hafer. Hafer's been around for 45 years, performing audits, reviews, compilations for Florida's associations. Nowadays, people are like, where's your borders? We do the whole state. We're willing to audit anything in that area, anything in those parameters. I will say this, we do have a full service tax department that puts us above board and well over some of our competitors. We're able to deal with a lot of individualized issues, selling a golf course and how that would affect the tax returns or even the individual's equity. So these are some benefits to our company. Also, this time of the year, we're doing a little bit of help with our associations, getting them ready for for budget season and finishing their budgets off correctly. This is a big year, a big deadline coming up. The last year, potentially, you can waive structural reserves if you're dealing with CSRS. So these are a lot of issues. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, we're here for you at Hafer.
So very good. And I also want to make an honorable mention of Nicole Johnson Pendergrass. She's a partner and she's also the operations manager at Hafer, and really appreciate your sponsorship. Next, I want to introduce someone you can go to for elevators. We have Brooke Cavender on. She's the business development manager for Southwest Elevator.
Thanks, Peggy. Hi, my name is Brooke. I'm with Southwest Elevator. We are a family-owned and operated elevator company here in South Florida. I'm actually the fourth generation stepping in, so we've been around quite some decades now. We specialize in elevator maintenance, repair, and modernization. So if you have elevators in your building, I'm sure you know there's a lot of new code changes. If you have any questions, I'd love to be a contact for you, and I will drop my info in the chat box. Thank you.
Awesome, great. Thank you so much. And I know we all who have elevators need a great contact because there seems to be a lot of emergencies out there. Next, I want to introduce Dawn Miller. She unfortunately can't be here today, but she sent me a text and she said to tell you that they will come out to your property and evaluate their properties for any potential liabilities like root damage, potholes, broken, lifted car stops. So it's budget season. I'd walk your property and look around and see what's going on and reach out to Dawn. She'll get you some great service and prices for it. Next, I want to introduce Mike Hazlitt. He's with Sherwin-Williams. Mike, introduce yourself and what do you do? Let's see, is he on?
I'm on.
Oh, okay.
Hey, good morning, everyone, or afternoon, I'm sorry. My name is Mike Hazlitt with the Sherwin-Williams Paint Coatings Company. Been in the industry about 13 years, and for the last year, I've been assigned kind of a new role that we're doing as an engineering resource rep for the Palm Beach, Broward, Treasure Coast area, working with professional engineers in our area, kind of being a direct connection and a trusted advisor for anything paint and coatings. So scope of work and full specifications, kind of what I specialize in, job walkthroughs before, during, and post. and providing those resources for waterproofing, roofing, and restoration solutions, as well as offering CEU courses through Sherwin-Williams. And now are willing to get my hands dirty and do some product and application demonstrations as well. So if you have anything paint coating related, please reach out.
Okay, awesome, and welcome.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I want to introduce Jamie Gelfand. She's with First Citizens Bank. And Jamie, tell us about yourself and what you do.
Thanks, Peggy. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jamie Gelfand. I'm the Regional Sales Officer at First Citizens Bank, covering the Tri-County market. First Citizens Bank is a 125-year-old top 20 bank. In the CAB, Community Association Banking Division, we provide financial solution options for property management companies and associations. There are API integrations with over 20 software. In addition to the lockbox, we provide loan options for the milestone repairs that many of you are working on. There is a quick term loan for needs of $3 million or less. This loan, if the association qualifies, is approved in 3 days and closes in 30. For other terms, we provide up to 15 years with an up to a 24-month interest-only period. My information will be in the chat. If I can be of assistance, enjoy the class.
Thanks, Jamie. Okay, next I have Paul Fulkerson. He's the sales director at PSI Roofing. Paul, tell us about yourself and what you do for the company and what is the company doing for associations.
Thank you, Peggy. As you mentioned, my name is Paul Fulkerson. I am the director of sales here at PSI Roofing. We provide premium products and services by educating our clients and creating trust and respect and satisfaction while forming long-lasting relationships. We've been in this market for 30 years under the same name, Provincial South Incorporated, under Sunbiz. We are roof asset management professionals. We include budgets, planning, execution, emergency roof repairs, full service proactive roof maintenance programs, as well as hurricane preparedness and hurricane restorations in the condo, HOA, and commercial property market here in South Florida. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. And thank you for your sponsorship. Next, I want to introduce Milt Ledig. He's the sales manager at Serpico. Tell us about yourself, Milt, and what the company does.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Milton Leidig, and I've been with Serpico for a little over 2 years. I was wooed out of the property management business with First Service after 17 years. And what Serpico does, mainly our focus is on concrete restoration. And we do quite a bit of extensive advertising in a property magazine and some local flyers. And when we get the call, our job is to go out and just explain to, usually it's the property manager I meet with, and then it leads to to the board and just trying to educate them on the proper way to go about to comply with all the rules and regulations since the tragedy of Surfside. And I usually recommend a number of engineers because I find that a lot of properties are saying, I try to call engineer companies and I can't get to first base, but through us, we're able to, connect with the engineers, and lately it's been very, very positive, and our workload is filling up as the January 1st deadline hits for full reserves. So we're very busy, but we're always available, and I'm always available for a phone call.
Awesome. Okay, great, and welcome. Okay, next I want to introduce MES Painting. Mauricio Segovia is actually the owner. He is going to be in his company on the sponsor sheet. He had to go to an out-of-town appointment today. So we'll move along to Dante Mirapietri. He's a technical sales rep with Tremco. He also is not available today to actually be on the webinar, but he is the manager over their coatings division and waterproofing. That's where they really specialize, based out of Ohio, and a great national contact. So if you need any technical information, he would be the one to turn to. Okay, with that, I'm going to turn this over to our moderator for today, Daniel Baum. He's the CEO of COA Solutions, and then he's going to introduce our speaker for today. Daniel, take it over.
Thanks, Peggy. Welcome again, everyone. Our webinar for today is on buildings and structural restoration and how it relates to budgets. And with us today is Christopher Smyth of Smyth Engineering. And we have a very special introduction for him. Hercules, if you can cue up our intro for Chris.
Daniel, I was going ahead and take over and play the video before we get started.
Great. Let's do it, Chris. Thank you.
All right, thank you. I have somebody to give me a nice introduction on some of my background. Let me share my screen.
Chris, are you with us? Chris, your screen is black at the moment. Chris, can you hear us? Bear with us, everyone. We're having some slight technical difficulties.
I promise this is worth waiting for.
Yeah. It is a very colorful introduction and nothing like I've ever seen on any of our webinars. So I'm eager to see it just as much as everybody else. And if not, we'll just have to do it the old school way.
In this world of Zoom meetings, I think everybody's used to this happening. So he'll be logging back on shortly, I'm sure.
Yeah, and ladies and gentlemen, while we're at it, I already see a couple of questions popping up in the Q&A section. If you already know you have questions, you're welcome to put them in there. Of course, as Chris goes through the slides, I will ask him the questions that you're asking specific to the slides. And then if there are questions that are more general in nature, we'll probably take them at the end.
That was embarrassing. Sorry, I forgot. I got this. It must be I got disconnected right there. I'm so sorry.
That's all right. Welcome back. You have how are we doing on the intro?
I don't know. Does Vinteum want to just try it one more time, or is it lost its impact?
No, let's give it one more shot. It's a fun one. So you'll just have to talk faster through your presentation.
Okay, got it.
Hercules, can you try it again, please?
Yeah. Might as well get Hercules. Yeah, queued up.
You want to try and do it that way, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm going to see if I can't share the URL myself right here. Here we go. Can everyone see that?
Yes, his head's a little off the scale there, but can't hear it.
No volume?
No.
The very end, can you click it on the speaker?
Yeah, it's playing in volume. That's max volume that I can play it at.
Okay, well, why don't we let...
Okay. It's okay. I can start the webinar.
All right, so give me 1 second. Let me just stop sharing here. All right, so we'll do this the old school way because we're obviously having some technical difficulties, although that would have been fun. Chris had a whole cameo set up for his intro. Let me just take a quick stab here. So Chris Smyth, Smyth Engineering. Chris graduated in 2009 from FSU with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. He also has a general contractor's license. He has extensive exposure to construction activities throughout his career and has a lot more experience primarily in concrete restoration. So he'll be talking a lot about that today. And with that, Chris, I'll let you take the floor.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate that. Get into my presentation. All right, can everybody see that?
Yep. Yeah,
Yep.
looks good, Chris.
All right, thank you, Daniel, for the introduction. My name is Christopher Smyth, owner of Smyth Engineering, and today I'll be talking primarily about preventive maintenance and how to save you money. Right now, preventive maintenance, there's many things that take preventive maintenance, things including but not limited to roofing systems, double detector check valves or backflow preventers, fire protection systems, waterproofing, paint, cooling towers, boilers, emergency generators, dune crossing, and trash chutes. Of course, not all buildings have all these different components, but it's good to talk about it and be educated because of course all different buildings have different systems. For instance, typically buildings that are not as tall, like 3-story to 7-story buildings would have hydraulic elevator. Any buildings like, high rise, 7 stories or more will deal with the traction elevator. So basically the idea of preventive maintenance is to save you future dollars. Every dollar on average will save you $5 in future expense. Just simple things to take care of, like the annual maintenance, looking at these different things, components in your building on a regular schedule, just making sure that you have these schedules planned out to look at all these different components that I mentioned. Not performing preventive maintenance could also void warranties. So if you have a roof installed and you have a 20-year warranty, but that comes in contingencies, as in you have, at least yearly inspections. So if you don't have the yearly inspections, inspection logs, things that come out there, have a professional out there to take a look at the, well, of course, it depends on the system, but looking at the seams, looking at the flashing, looking at these different components of the roof. And if you don't do it and there's, say 8 years down the line and there's an issue, they're going to ask you for basically all your logs for your inspections each year. And if you don't have it, it could definitely void the warranty and you got to pay for it yourself. A maintenance plan is basically a blueprint of what components to maintain, how to maintain the components, and frequency to maintain components. And it could be as very simple, it could be very simple that, any maintenance person at the building could do. Basically what to expect in regards to building restoration. Basically building restoration is, critical components as outlined in SB 154, such as waterproofing and roofing, that needs to be efficiently assessed, as failure of these components can significantly attribute to the accelerated deterioration of the primary members. Basically, when you have water infiltration into the building, that's when you're going to have material, escalate, deterioration escalate. Champlain Towers, the famous building that we're doing all these new legislation for, the waterproofing system failed. And that's one of the reasons why we had such excessive deterioration that, caused much accelerated, failure of the building. So the waterproofing system, is very important. You want to basically, for your catwalks and your balconies, you really want to, recoat your balconies every 5 years on average, and you want to replace your waterproofing every 15 years. It's basically to assess the building in respect to life safety of the residents. as an engineer, the primary goal for us is to not give people a hard time. We're not out there trying to give people a hard time. Hey, you got to come up with, $10 million for your building. We're here to provide life safety first. At least that should be the goal. All right. So basically what we want to concern ourselves with is, what is the cause of structural deterioration? I don't want to talk about Champlain Towers or milestone inspections that's been done to death. I want to basically get into what needs to be prevented and how could you prevent these issues just by doing like regular monthly, yearly maintenance. And looking in this research, say when you get a building to, say if to do a milestone inspection or to do a structural inspection, you want to gather up the information such as the original building plans, permit history. You want to know what the building is composed of. You want to know the structural components. You want to know, how the seawall is built. You want to know, like, basically the foundation, all the structures. You want to know the history of the building before you get started. You want to know basically how the building was built, well, according to the plans, which is all we could go by, and assuming that, they did the right thing. Okay, so the definition of preventive maintenance is basically regular planned maintenance based on time-based triggers. These could be based upon usage, hours, like machine hours for like a generator. It could be based on anything. You have roofing system. I'm gonna keep mentioning roofing, but that's a big thing, because that serves many different functions. Even at the top floor of a building, the insulation, that could keep the building cooler. There's different types of insulation, roofing systems that could keep the building cooler. So basically, it's important to hire also the right professional consultant to maintain the respective building systems, such as fire protection. And also, although cooling towers are not, quote unquote, considered a critical building item as defined by SB 154, of course, it is very critical to maintain your cooling towers, as not having air conditioning could be brutal, especially right here in Florida. And if you have a newborn child or things like that, you want to make sure that you're ahead of the game. If once your cooling towers go and they malfunction or they break down, you're without AC, it's not comfortable, and you have a lot of bigger issues as could be prevented if you properly maintained it. So you want to be diligent in performing preventive maintenance, even having a preventive maintenance plan, which is the whole goal. You want to have a plan that could be clearly followed, and ensure to keep adequate stock of replacement parts. You get something installed, say emergency generator. You want to get all the parts that can be replaced. You look at the double detector backflow preventer. You want to have the O-rings. You want to have the gaskets. You want to have the valves. You want to have things that can be replaced. You don't want to have something break down and you have to call the manufacturer and be like, hey, we need this, gasket or something. We got to get this 4-week lead time or something like that. If something breaks down, you want to have the right material on site to do the fix as needed. So basically, getting into roofing again, even the best systems require diligent maintenance. Basically, you want to look at all the components. You want the condition. There's different causes and effects. Basically it could be, they didn't hear the material properly. There could be moisture trapped in that could be accelerated by the sun exposure. So that would cause blisters. You have a lot of different alligator cracking. You want to remove the excess material. You want to repatch it. So basically, there's different ways to maintain and provide the maintenance. It could include trimming excess material, readhering felt reinforced material, and installing heavy layers of opaque gravel to help prevent these issues from occurring in the future. And of course, I know that there's different roofing systems, and right now I'm talking about a built-up modified roofing system. And one of the pictures there, you can see that there's the granules. You have the granules in the cap ply that's being accumulated in the corner of the building right there. And over time, it just keeps building up and up and up. And this could cause issues as clogging the drains. So something simple as just cleaning it out, just looking up there, even cleaning the trash, looking at the seams. The water is going to want to penetrate through the seams. And in order to properly, assess the condition, you want to look at the insulation. There's different ways to inspect the insulation. There's a test called the TAS 126. Well, I know you're not going to remember that, but basically it's basically using a testing system that detects the hydrogen ions in the actual insulation, because water has hydrogen ions, and by using the system, it's basically radars this, which is a nuclear meter that measures the amount of moisture content in the insulation. So you want to do this when you're replacing a roof. There's different options. Maybe you could do a recover if it passes this test and there's not that much moisture inside the insulation. So it's recommended basically to do this once a year inspection, preferably during the dry season. And of course, after each major rain event or rainstorm. So a hurricane comes through, you want to do an inspection. You want to make sure to do it after any major event to make sure that everything is okay up there. Okay, going into plumbing, which is a critical item, I believe, that is not so far properly addressed in my opinion, in the fact that we have these in the bathrooms and in the kitchen, you have these sanitary stacks. And they're typically made of cast iron piping. And cast iron piping is very useful because it's stronger, but it corrodes. So there's many advantages to having cast iron piping. It's more durable, it's fire resistance, which is more applicable for these different types of buildings we have. If we have fire rating between the units and the walls, so we want to have something that's fire resistant. It's more cost effective. It reduces heat going into fire resistance, and the sound. So it reduces sound. So nobody wants to hear that. If you live in a high rise, you don't want to be in your apartment hearing a toilet flush like all day. So basically you want to, look at the plumbing, and plumbing is a critical item in SB 154. So after 25 years, the piping could corrode, it could split, it could crack, it could have other issues. And then what do you have after that? So basically you have a sanitary biohazard. So say if a pipe breaks, what do you have to do? You have to rip up the floor. You have to rip up the wall. You have to do all these different types of things to access this pipe to replace the pipe. So you want to avoid this. You want to get these plumbing, especially after 25 years, and especially in a coastal environment, you want to inspect them with the camera. You want to camera inspect your pipes, even after that, even after 50 years, and the board would tell you, hey, we've had our plumbing pipes inspected. We've had our pipes, our plumbing pipes, you still want to inspect it. There's different types of things I'll get on the next couple slides that, will really show you why you want to do these different types of inspections. There's something called, it's a rehabilitation, a thing called cured in place piping. Basically, it's putting in, with epoxy, a liner down the inside of a cast iron pipe. So you, with doing inverse installation inside out, you roll the material down with epoxy, and when it hardens, it sticks. It's like glue. It glues to the sides of the pipes, and you hit it with a hammer. It's so hard that it cannot be penetrated. So it is a very, very durable system. And then you use a robot to cut out the holes for the Ys going into the units. So this is, I believe, a very more effective way to address plumbing as opposed to replacing the pipes when something fails. Because when something fails, you have not even the cost, you have more issues. And even if you do other systems, like I'll get into gapping, you have issues where you don't have adherence like you should have. You want to do the whole pipe completely instead of small different sections. So this is really why we do, this different types of inspections. What you want to do when you do these milestone inspections, when you do the SIRS, you want to camera the pipes, if you're at least 25 years old, and even if you had this done before, you really want to see what you have, because it could be a ticking time bomb. You have the structural components of the building, I say, are the bones of, like, say, for human, the bones. And the building and the sanitary lines are the arteries. So, you have an issue with your arteries, you're going to have problems. Okay, so here is a samples of inside of pipes where you have gaffing method, where basically using the same method but cutting out holes before you put in the liner at the Y's and T's. So this the T and Y is still the same condition, and at the location where it meets that conjuncture at the Y, it doesn't properly adhere. It does not, because it can't. There's no way to, because you're using scissors or something to cut out the pieces to put it in there, and then the water is going to it depends, but eventually water is going to start getting behind it, and then you're going to have future issues. So this is something I think should be more concentrated on when we're doing this, because plumbing, of course, we want to look at the backflow preventer. Of course, we want to look at, any stains, any type of dripping, any type of fasteners or fittings that's leaking, anything like that. But one of the primary things I think really should be looked at are the sanitary pipes. On backflow preventer, this is a critical item because it provides domestic water as well as fire sprinkler water into the building for the fire protection systems. So basically, the double detector check valve, if it fails, it's costly. Even to replace it is costly, because what are you tying into? You're tying into the primary water main coming off usually the street to the system, and you're using a tap and sleeve to tap into that system. So it's all continuous, because this water main is going to feed all the buildings that are adjacent to your building. So when you have a breakdown, or if you have, a failure, you're going to have, when you replace it, you got to install a line stop. Line stops are very expensive, as in you have to make sure you have continuous water flow to your building and the adjacent buildings at all time. So it's basically a bypass. So to avoid that as much as possible, you want to inspect these once a year, and you want to replace things like, the O-rings, the valves, any type of flanges, any type of components that can be replaced as necessary. This is one in Hutchinson Island that was, getting pretty rough shape, that I included in the report, telling them, hey, this is how you should, inspect this building. This is how you should care for this, the check valve, the system to supply the water and fire sprinkler water to your building. All right, so the fire protection systems. So basically the fire protection systems, without saying, this is very critical for the building. This is something, it's life-saving. You want to make sure that you look at any red tags for your inspections. If there's any red tags, you want to address them immediately. You want to make sure that you take care of this basically right away, any issues with your fire protection system. Basically, fire protection piping is always energized, right? So you always have to have water inside the pipe, and you always have that pressure. So you have constant head pressure within your pipes. So basically, without the minimum water pressure, you can't have the supply of water as you need. You can't have the required water you need to put out the fires that you need. So basically, they won't have enough output. So you want to check the flanges and the bolts. So due to the pressure, if you have any weak points in the system and the line, and especially the main fire riser, and you have the bolts that just give out, they're so corroded and just they fail and the pipe breaks, you're going to have an issue. You're going to have, you're going to flood your building. So just careful things like this is getting the system shut down, replacing the flanges, replacing bolts, replacing gate valves, replacing things like that could avoid this. I've seen many times, even recently, where a building would, hey, just casually, yeah, our building flooded or our garage flooded because our fire sprinkler, our fire line just broke. I'm like, oh, that's great. So just, you want to take care of this because it's going to be very, very costly. And that's the whole idea of this webinar, is to spend the money to take care of the system before you have a failure. You really want to carefully inspect everything, all the system, the whole system completely, and just make sure you have your inspections once a year.
Chris, this is Daniel. So we have a question. It's from the previous slide, but I'd like to address it. And the question is, what do you do with cast iron pipe if it's damaged under the foundation? we've been told that a camera cannot see if they would be able to line, if they'd be lined and could damage the pipe as a liner is being placed. I guess what they're trying to say is they've been told that putting in a liner could actually damage the pipe further as it's being placed in the pipe. Would it have to be replaced anyway? Is that accurate? What do you do with the foundational situation where they're being told that the camera can't see down there, or that the liner may cause additional damage if they attempt to put it in?
It really depends on the condition. That's what it comes down to. You have to properly assess the actual condition the best you possibly can to see if it needs to be replaced. Because of course, this is not like a cure-all for every cast iron pipe out there. You know, there are times when you still have to demo the slab, access the pipe, replace the pipe. So if it's to a condition where that does make sense, that if it can't be, repaired by this method, it will have to be replaced. So that is on a case-by-case basis. So there is no definite answer. It's basically about getting somebody to assess the actual condition and see what the proper fixes can be.
Sure, and I would assume that you'd also recommend that if someone's coming in and telling you that, you might want to get more than just one opinion.
That is a good point. It's always a good point to always get a second opinion. There's other companies out there, you want to get a second opinion on everything. If they tell you the same thing, then yeah, but and you always can't trust everybody. So it's a slippery slope. You want to get at least two opinions, two analysis. And it is true that sometimes you will have to, replace piping. You might have to demo the slab, demo the foundation, demo the concrete, just to dig down, access the pipe, it could get costly. That's why the whole idea is getting one step ahead and, maybe start looking at your pipes after your building turns 25 years old. But that's not always the case, sometimes you're inherited buildings that are older. So I would just say that's a good point about the second opinion, but it's more about a case-by-case basis.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Just a reminder to everyone, please put your questions into the Q&A. As they come up on the slides, I'll ask Chris for answers. And if your questions are, maybe we missed a slide, or your questions are more relevant for a general question, we'll take those at the end of the webinar. Thank you.
And also, if I'm talking too fast or anything like that, just let me know. I'm trying to pace myself.
You got it, Chris. You're doing great.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. All right. So basically, going more into the controllers. So without saying, as I said, lots riding on the sprinkler system's ability to function properly. So over time, advanced safety features and building codes have implemented ways to prevent arson and ensure uninterrupted flow. Before, when you had fire systems, you could shut off a valve and, set fire to the building, I guess. I don't know. But basically, there's much more advanced systems. There's always bypasses. There's, ways you can't tamper with these things. So it's a fire protection system is pretty complicated when you really get down to it. So the components are fire pump, master fire pump controller, and a sprinkler system. So maintenance, looking at the water flow alarm devices, pressure switches, gauges. Typically, a visual inspection could help. If there's debris in the sprinkler heads, you could take a look at that and replace them as necessary. That's why there's always necessary to have spare sprinkler heads to be replaced. You always got to have spare sprinkler heads on site. So that's something you always look for, to replace them as needed. So basically, inside of the fire pump controller, you want to check it for tightness of wires and indication of watermarks in the system. If there's any indication of watermarks in the fire pump controller system, you want to make sure to address it immediately, replace the parts as necessary, and that way, you avoid any future issues with the communication between the panel and the system and the controller. So it's a pretty elaborate system that can be maintained, and with the proper maintenance package and the proper personnel. So you want to have a professional fire protection company inspector on board to do this. And of course, you had the fire marshal doing their inspection. They should be doing it once a year. So just work with them. And they don't want to give you, again, these people don't want to give you a hard time. At least most of them don't. They really want to make sure that your building is safe. Okay, waterproofing and painting. As I mentioned before, waterproofing is a very critical issue when it comes to building. This is something that, as I said, recoat your balconies, and your balconies and catwalks every 5 years, and you want to replace every 15 years. That's on average. Some people, they just wait till they are forced to do it. Or I don't know. It really depends on the building, but you really want to keep up to date. You really want to make sure that you take care of this. So basically painting is typically performed every 5 to 10 years. Cost per painting, could rely on, the existing condition, quality of paints, and accessibility. So you want to do ways to preventive maintenance is simple things. You could pressure wash your building, remove your deleterious material, dirt, debris off the side of the building. So basically, take care of your building, re-caulk the windows. If there's any type of alligator cracking or any type of, look around the windowsills, look around, the door frames, look around everywhere where water can enter, like around the fenestrations, around windows, around doors. Look for any cracks, anything obvious, any peeling, blistering, anything like that. You could address it. There's different ways. You could reseal your waterproofing. You could, redo the caulking. There's a lot of different ways to, maintain, the painting and waterproofing on your building so it even lasts even longer. So you could wait, 10 years to paint your building. So basically, it is very critical to keep your building watertight, as moisture penetrating the building could affect the structural components as mentioned. And once it gets into the building, you have much greater issues that could cause bigger problems in the future. And it's best to, prevent it, at the beginning. All right, so getting into cooling towers, as I mentioned, you want to have not only a preventive maintenance plan, but you want to have an effective water management plan as well. Because there's a lot of deleterious material, harmful material in the water that could generate by circulating the water. So basically the cooling tower provides cool water to the units inside the apartments, and then it recirculates it and brings hot water back into the cooling tower system. So if it keeps recirculating, you could have buildup, even though there's advanced systems that prevent this. Maintenance can include, depending on the system, removal of debris scale from the drift eliminators and basin trash screens. So this is ways to kind of get rid of, the harmful material. Checking the rates of the buildup of silt on the floor of the cold water basin. So basically seeing how much, silt builds up on the floor over time, if any. So you see it, just monitor it like every week, every month, how often, see how much it builds up. And also lubrication of the fan shaft bearings as necessary, belt condition and tension, because what it wants to do is vibrate. You see on the bottom picture, you have the fan up there. So the fan's connected to the motor. And first of all, keep an eye on the motor, just make sure that it's, properly, everything's working well, the belts, everything, and it wants to vibrate. So sometimes you have vibration controllers when it starts, vibrating out of whack, it gets a little, you have these regulators that regulate the level of the cooling tower just to make sure that it's doesn't vibrate too much and cause, further issues or, to the structure, to the substrate or anything like that. So look at the flange at the top, those bolts, I don't even know how you can even tighten those bolts. You're gonna, I don't know, you wanna, basically, they should last 30 years, these cooling towers on average. Depends. You have fiberglass or stainless steel. You have stainless steel cooling towers, typically you want to give them 30 years, but you want to refurbish them after every 15 years. Refurbishing is basically replacing the motors. It's basically, doing the whole surgical procedure of the cooling tower, shutting it down. You want to clean the water. You want to make sure that everything is, basically all the fittings, all the valves, all the flanges, the ladder, the fan motor, everything is working properly or replaced as necessary. So basically, You want to, the average amount of maintenance should take place every week, every month, every 3 months, semi-annually, annually, and every 5 years. So that's on average. It depends. A lot of it's visual inspection, but what you really want to do is you want to enlist the services of a water treatment professional. The water treatment professional will help guide you along the process, at least when it comes to the actual condition of the cooling tower water that's getting recirculated, just to make sure no one gets sick, that the water is healthy, and that the coils that bring down the water to help filter it, the filter itself gets replaced and cleaned as necessary. I think the filter should be cleaned at least once a month.
Chris, we have a question on back to the painting.
Yes.
Is the 5 to 10 year painting mark also for breezeways and hallways?
Yes, absolutely. If it's enclosed, then it could probably last a little longer. But if it's out, if it's exterior, yes, absolutely.
Okay. And then additionally, the question came in is, would you recommend these same maintenance items apply to the walls around the community besides the buildings themselves, the external walls of the community?
That would be more for aesthetics, because you're not, it's not really for life safety or the actual residents themselves. You're not really protecting anybody. So I would say that would be more for like aesthetics, and you probably want to do it also to keep your building and your property beautiful. But for an actual what I'm looking for is functionality, and for helping the unit owners and not having water infiltration into their building, into their units. I would just say that the exterior walls around the property, that would be more aesthetic. But I would definitely recommend it, just to keep your building looking nice. And obviously those walls can still deteriorate over time depending on what kind of walls you have. If you have exterior CME walls, stem walls, the water can still penetrate into there. And it could, deteriorate over time. So you would still want to take care of those as well.
Okay, great. And then we had another question come in for a recommendation on a water treatment professional back on the cooling tower preventative maintenance. Perhaps you can recommend someone in the chat at the end of our webinar.
Yes, sure. I could definitely do that. Yes, absolutely.
Perfect. Please continue.
Thank you, Daniel. Okay, so going into emergency generators, they are critical, even though they're quote unquote mechanical, and mechanical systems are not part of SB 154 components. These can be, if you have a unit owner that's basically, maybe has health issues, medical issues, and he's on some type of, medical, equipment that needs to be powered on. I don't know. I mean, specific situations, someone with liver, kidney issues that needs to have medical treatment at their house. And if a storm comes and their power goes out, I don't know. I mean, that's one example. If you have, newborn baby, just different things you have to have power for. You want to have a working refrigerator. You want to have working AC at all times and power. And obviously in hospitals, that's a given. But even in multifamily and condos and apartment buildings too. So basically, you want to be able to continuously check the oil levels and coolant levels. It's not more about time, it's more about hours of operation. So the hours of operation really indicates how often you should do these different things. So replacing all these different, looking for leaks, checking the manifold, spark plugs if necessary, the motor oil, looking in there if there's any loose wires, if there's any loose connections, just making sure that you properly maintain your emergency generator. And as I said, the big thing is attic stock. Attic stock is the concept that once something's installed, you want to have that extra of it. If you're building a condo and you're installing carpet tile and ceiling tile and acoustical, ceiling tiles and things like that, you always want to get a couple extra boxes, just in case, you break one or, damage one or things like that. Same thing should apply. You want to have these spare parts, and with the manufacturer's documentation, it should give you a spare parts list of what the machine comes with, and you should have those on site as I was stating, if something breaks down, you don't want to have to go ahead and order it, wait like, however long it takes, what the lead time is to get something, to get your, equipment running again. All right, trash chutes is, people don't really think of trash chutes as a critical, it's not critical, but it can lead to fires. You have people shoving pizza boxes in there, or you have other people that don't care, or you just don't maintain it, you don't clean it. So basically, once a year, every year, you want to clean the quote unquote goo off the sides, break it down. Per code, you have to have a water supply at the very top of the trash chute to clean it out as well, which also doubles as a fire protection system if there's any fire that breaks out inside the trash chute. And inside the trash room, you have to have a fire sprinkler in both, at the top of the trash chute and in the trash room. So you want to have both places. You want to have your fire protection system in here. You want to clean it. You don't want, infestation of, bugs. You don't want to have any other issues that comes on by not being able to properly care for your trash chute. I know it's a simple thing, but there's this also can be treated as well. So you could also, as I said, so infestation, there's fires, you want to have, basically keep an eye on it. Just keep an eye on your trash chute system and replace, anything as necessary for this. Typically, I say these last about 60 years, maintained, every year. Okay, so getting into elevators, what you want to do in these inspections is you want to look at all these elevator pits, right? I've seen elevator pits where you look in there and the hydraulic oil is just kicked over. So there's oil just all over the floor. And it's like, really? First, they should be, in most maintenance plans, they should be every month coming out and, refilling these buckets, looking at everything, looking at all these different items for these different components, the head packing right there. So what's pictured there on the left, you have on top of that flange right there in the bolt, that's the head packing. So it's, covered in hydraulic oil. So that should be clean. So you want to take that off, replace the head packing, and replace the flange and bolts right there. So these are more for smaller, like 3-story to 7-story buildings, because they work off a piston and usually can't get up higher than that. The hydraulic fluid, pretty much just powers the piston to, make the elevator work. So it only goes up, say, you're limited at basically 60 feet. And then there are advantages too, also to these systems, to both systems. You have traction elevator is more efficient, is faster. So there's different ways, there's different reasons why people use both these different types of elevators. So basically looking here, making sure there's a ladder. Very simple. You look in, sometimes there's no ladder. Like, how are you going to access this? If something happens, breakdown, you're going to jump in there. Look at, there's proper lighting. Just look at these different things that could be an issue. So there's a lot of other things as, cleaning the guide rails, cleaning the pits, the condition of the car top, condition of the motors, basically looking at everything to keep it, properly running. And there's always a maintenance plan. There really should be somebody out there once a month to, look at these elevators.
Yes, we have an elevator question.
Yes.
So we have someone who has a 35-plus-year-old building on the beach side. It's a 5-story building, and they have a hydraulic lift issue with one of the 5 elevators. They're being told it's going to be 4 to 6 months before a repair can be made. Should they get the other 4 inspected and bid out for all 5?
All right. So how old is the building?
Over 35 years old.
And it's the original elevator, correct?
Presumably, yes. That was not. That's not mentioned in the question.
Okay. So basically, what I put is 23-year useful life. Well, to be modernized, and there's different levels of modernization. So you want to, and I said, as I believe Brooke said earlier about, different codes and different, new regulations needed. But for that question particularly, I would say have someone definitely inspect the other four. I don't know if they're all of them were inspected and this was the only issue, but I definitely would do a thorough inspection on the other elevators, and just to ensure all the other elevators don't have the same issue or will face the same issue in the future. But if this is particular problem there, I would say yes. I would say right now you might as well just do this work. I don't know if it's just replacing the piston, the jack, the hydraulic pump. I'm not sure exactly what the full scope of work is, but basically this would probably be a good time to do all 5 of them if they're going to do this one, if that was an issue. So I would suggest at least getting the other 4 inspected and seeing what they say on the other 4 about the condition.
Yeah, so it would seem like, based just discussing how these things come into effect on a budgetary basis, I would think that in order to be able to budget for potential repairs that may come down the road, having all of those elevators inspected at the same time, knowing that one of them has a hydraulic issue, would probably be a very good way to make sure that you budget appropriately for what could be coming for some of the other maintenance issues.
Yes, that's a pretty good synopsis.
All right, please continue.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
All right, so basically getting into other main type, traction elevator. So there's primarily 2 main types. On the left, you have the counterweights. So the counterweights is there to basically counter the weight of the cab and the people inside the cab. They're much quicker than hydraulic elevators, but you still need to maintain them. They use a pulley system, basically maintaining it on a monthly inspection. You want to inspect the sheaves, you want to inspect the brakes, lubricating different components as necessary, cleaning the car sills and the hoistway sills. So there's different types of maintenance for this type of elevator, but yes, they would be maintained probably just as frequently as a hydraulic elevator. So look at the door gates, the tracks, the brakes, the cores. So there's different things to look at with these different types of elevators to maintain it. And I said, I believe from my understanding that you probably should have somebody out there once a month to look at your elevators.
Chris, we have a couple of other elevator questions.
Yes.
So how often are elevators modernized, and what is that exactly if my building is 55 years old?
I would say there's always new codes. There's always new regulations. There's always new updates to bring these things, like, with these door locks, right? That was like a new one that came out, I believe, having these mechanism for the door closers. So basically, you want a modernization, in my opinion, in my assessment, and my analysis, is basically the cabs and the motor, the controls, the whole control system. That is my understanding, to replace the control system and to modernize the actual cabs themselves. Because I believe that the reasoning is that every 23 years, there's going to be major changes in these elevator codes, and you always want to be up to date. And also, it could last longer with more maintenance. That's the whole idea. Like, the more you maintain your elevators, the longer they're going to last. That's a given. You have an elevator and you don't do anything until it breaks down, then it's not going to last as long. But in my assessment, that's what it entails, is redoing the cabs, the insides, the doors, and the all of the electronical systems in the elevator control room.
Okay, and then Chris, you had spoken earlier about when doing preventative maintenance for elevators and you look in the well and you see oil on the ground. A question came in, do you recommend an oil separator to be installed in the well area? They're in Sunny Isles. This person's asking a question for a condominium building in Sunny Isles. And when it floods, the elevator pit gets full of water. So the question is, do you recommend an oil separator to install in the well areas?
Okay, well, I think definitely want to take a look at that waterproofing in there. Take a polydetector 200D thickness gauge, which tests the thickness of the waterproofing in the pit, the dry thickness, to see what's there. Typically, you put a Zypex. There's a type of Zypex, basically waterproofing that you put on the exterior coating of that situation, depending on what the water table is. So you really want to put this type of waterproofing. Let's see if I have it. You kind of see it in this picture here. So it really has to do with this, waterproofing you're surrounded with. But if it's flooding, then you might have some bigger issues that you really need to assess pretty quickly. But it really, in situations like that, there's something called Zypex, Zypex. It's a crystalline waterproofing system that is like negative pressure that pushes the water back and doesn't allow it to penetrate into the pit. And that's typically what's used for these elevator pits. Oil water separator, I don't know. You really have to have someone take a look at this actual situation, what's going on, because sometimes you don't really know what's going on, and you have to do further investigation to see what the actual real issue is and what the corrective solution is. So it's really hard to say, on the spot.
Sure. And I would encourage the participants who have asked these questions to also reach out to, we've had 2 sponsors today that are in the painting and waterproofing space. You might want to reach out and ask them those questions. They'll be happy to answer. And of course, Brooke from Southwest Elevator is available also to answer any questions that you have about maintenance, or if you want to get another opinion. Bear with me one sec, Chris. Let me just see if this last question that came in has to do with elevator. Nope. Okay, please continue.
All right, thank you. All right, so getting really into building restoration. It is I believe that restoration should be done every 8 years, especially in coastal environments when you have the chloride ions. I'm sure you heard this many hundred times. Getting into the concrete is further accelerating the concrete deterioration. So basically, there's different ways. Actually, when you repair concrete, there's something called FerroGuard 903, FerroGard 903. It's an impregnator. It helps impregnate the concrete, and then it further helps stop deterioration and the corrosion of the reinforcement bar. So there's different ways to help the stopping the corrosion. It's all about money. It's all about spending the extra funds to properly repair everything. So you want to do the proper repairs over time. You look at these columns, you look at these steel columns, right? These steel columns are so deteriorated and they're so bad that a lot of them have column covers on it. A lot of people just keep wanting to paint them. So you want to paint them until there's, until you can't paint them anymore. You have to replace them. So, and then you do these repairs on them, but sometimes you do repairs on columns that need to be replaced. So you really need to assess it. If there's column covers on a building, you want to have them removed when you do the actual inspection. You really want to get deep down into the issues. You don't want to listen. If a building tells you, can you go ahead and sign off on our building as being okay? You really don't want to work with them. So basically, you want to do what's right. And we're not going to look for things, at least me. We're not going to look for things. We're not trying to find things. We really want to see what's there and give you our honest opinion. So this is one, for instance, there's one in Boynton Beach, right? 2 stories, 22 units. They basically said they had cracks in their first level cantilever catwalks, right? So I'm like, oh, you have some cracks. So basically, they were concerned. They're like, okay, let's look at this. It was on the coastline. Then I took a robot and inspected the underneath, and I'm like, hey, you have issues, you have structural issues, you got to fix this. If it doesn't get worse, some poor old lady could break her leg or worse. I don't know. Eventually the slab's going to give out, the corrosion's going to spread, it's going to keep going full depth. They don't want to hear it. They're like, basically, we don't have the money, we don't have the funds. And I'm sure that a lot of people say that, but when something happens, it's going to cost them 10 times more in lawsuits. So, you can't force somebody to do repairs. You can't force anybody to do what's needed. You can't I don't have puppeteer strings and be like, hey, do this. They're like, no, if they don't want to do it, they're not going to do it. And I don't know. There's really nothing. You just really don't want to get involved in situations like that. But you want to, as me, I want to tell people how it is. This is the situation. this is what you actually have going on, right? So that's the whole idea.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic example, Chris, of a situation that people might think is a minor issue, just having some simple cracking on the sidewalk, only to find out that there's actually a major structural issue underneath. And again, when you talk about budgeting, when those first cracks start to show themselves in that concrete, having an expert come in and take a look you could solve that fairly easily by doing some concrete restoration fairly quickly, or obviously in the worst case scenarios you let it go and let it go, and then you have a major catastrophe that not only will cost significantly more money to repair, but also the potential lawsuits, as you mentioned, that could come of it. So I think that's a really strong example of where preventative maintenance and spending the few dollars to have an expert come in and look at it in advance could save you enormous amounts of money to the community later.
Thank you, Daniel. All right. So
yeah, there was one other question. Bear with me on concrete restoration. I just want to get here. Bear with me 1 second. I'm just going through my questions here. So this was, bear with me. So when you're doing concrete restoration and replacement cement is being put in, this participant is asking that she's being told that it needs to be tested while the repairs are going on. Is that your understanding? And if so, how long does this testing take?
Okay, so what you should test is the existing concrete. If you want to take core samples to test the actual compressive strength of the concrete. So if you have something that's 3,000 psi and you want to pour 5,000 psi concrete over there next to it, you're not going to have the same structural load path that you have. So you want to test. And also, I'm not sure if she means the testing as in testing the slump and the compressive strength of what you're pouring, but you want to make sure that what you're doing is compatible. Like, I think back in the older days, like, you go back in the 70s or, before they really had, building codes were strict, they used a lot of water, right? So when you're pouring these deep foundations and you're pouring these footers and you're pouring these different things, you have a certain amount of water. Then once the inspector leaves, you throw up like, 20 and they're like, oh, I had 20 gallons, so you don't really know, especially how old the building is. You don't know how strong the concrete is. And the more water you put in there, it defeats the purpose because you don't have adhesion to the actual components to make it as strong as its design strength. So I think the idea of testing the existing and testing the new, you want to have compatible strength or compatible concrete together. I'm not sure if I answered the question, but I don't know.
Is there a certain amount of time that testing goes on for?
You want to do testing for new concrete. You want to do testing at 7 days, 14 days, and 28 days. Maybe after 3 days as well. So 3, 7, 14, 28, and you want to do break test the compressive strength of what you're pouring. But if you're talking about investigation, you could have a company come out there in a day and they take samples. They could take cores. They could take concrete that's there and test it. And you get results right away. So that's basically the testing that's involved. It depends what you're doing and what the scope of work is and what you're pouring. You're pouring a seawall, with hydraulic cement, or you're repairing it, or it depends what type of work it is.
So this one is it's not so much technical as a challenge that this community is having. This person is asking, they say, we need concrete restoration, but we can't get engineers to agree to do estimates. We've called everyone in our area and only one has agreed to come out, but we need 3 per our docs. We've been trying to get this done all year. Any recommendation for them and how they can go about getting, whether it's engineers or other vendors to come out and help them with getting bids for the concrete restoration work?
That's a loaded question right there.
Yeah.
But I would, I can't speak for anybody else, but if more or less, me personally, I don't mind looking at anything, like, because I'm on the road most days. So looking at something, it doesn't really seem like an issue. Just to, like, people should look at things, and when you look at something, tell them, hey, I can't do this, or I don't want to provide a bid, or I can't do this, or at least send pictures and see what you have. And I don't know if it's a special thing, like, I don't know, this could be, I don't know if this the situation here, but you have a milestone inspection report, right? And then they want you to inspect the project and then submit for permitting based on the report. Oh, we're going to do restoration based on this report, but we don't have plans, but we want to just go ahead and just do whatever we need that this report says. So it's I guess on a case by case basis again. But looking at things, I don't really see that should be an issue. Like, there should be plenty of engineers out there that are willing to, like, at least look at something for you, even tell you to, like, they could do it or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would just add to that, if people are having challenges finding vendors for these types of services, as we're going into the fall, I know that there will be condo expos going on several locations throughout the Tri-County area. That's Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach that I'm referring to. But it's also going on throughout the state of Florida. So look for local condo expos that may be going on. You'd be able to find vendors there as well.
That's a very good point. Very good point.
Bear with me one sec. The person added to that question. They said that the issue is with their carports and balconies, and no one seems to be able to help them with their needs. So, Cliff, I would just say try the local condo expos. You should be able to find them coming up in the next few months. There are several, and hopefully you can find some additional vendors there. I would also suggest perhaps looking or going to speak with people in the communities near you. Maybe they've used some of the vendors. And of course, property managers in your area might also be able to recommend other vendors that can help. Chris, with that, oh yeah, Peggy, please.
Yes, hi. At the end of this class, I'm going to give you those dates of those webinars. But the other thing is you could call some large or larger property management companies and ask them for something on their vendor list, because some of them have preferred vendors. I would recommend like Campbell Property Management or First Service Residential, Associa. Those are kind of the largest ones in this area, and they would probably share information. So, okay. And also, you'd be glad to contact me. I'll help where I can. I do know a lot of vendors just from networking. That's all.
Okay, thank you guys. Thank you guys. The only thing I'm going to say about this slide, because I know structural deterioration, structural repairs, Surfside, all these different things has been talked to death, but just the condition of these buildings, how they get, and people do not realize they're living like this. Like this one on the bottom left, right? The community in West Palm Beach. They have like 23 buildings, right? 23 three-story buildings. All of them are like this, all of them. But then they're like, oh yeah, we want to fix this building and we want to fix that building, but we don't want to fix that building yet. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know what to tell people sometimes. But these get pretty rough shape that you don't want to wait till it gets to this point. And the last thing I want to talk about is electrical systems. One main thing about electrical systems is, I like to, really have a good analysis on electrical systems. Basically looking at these different, there's different to know, Federal Pacific panels right here. These are Federal Pacific panels, right? People think, oh, you don't use them anymore, you got to replace them. At least someone that knows about a little bit about electrical. So they're still around, they're still in business. The main issue is that the main feed and the primary service, that is okay. They've never had an issue. The main issue with Federal Pacific panels are the branch panels, the panels inside the units and inside the rooms like the laundry rooms, things like that. Look, typically the wires are rated for about 30 degrees Celsius most times in breakers. This was like 39.1. So you have different, they're prone to overheating and arcing and causing fires. You'll say, oh, there's 50 years old and never had a fire. So it's like, it can happen, of course. You're not guaranteed to have a fire, if you pull these panels in there, but it's preferable to replace them if you come across them.
I would also add to that, Chris, just from an insurance standpoint, pretty much every policy that I've written this year for new property coverage, when the inspector goes out, that is a big red flag on the rec letters. Where they find those panels, they're starting to ask communities to replace them completely or get dropped from their property insurance. So if you know you have panels that are outdated, or especially these types of panels that Chris is referring to, you should already be budgeting to replace them, or you're going to run the risk of having your property insurance terminated.
Thank you, Daniel. And this is the last slide. Basically, the issue on the right, you have these conductors. So you have the neutrals coming out of the system right here. So you have these basically going into the main lugs right there on the right side out of the primary service or the feed from FP&L. You have two hot wires or ungrounded conductors going into the main lug. So that is a big no-no. This is a panel that should definitely be replaced. There's other items like that you could do, like splicing. You could splice, a new breaker, circuit breakers, different things like that. But main things to look for is arcing, any frayed plastic, frayed wire, overheating wire, like the ones on the left. Those are pulling pool pump equipment. So those were incredibly hot. So we really, we replaced those panels. In the middle is just a standard, light meter to test the luminescence in a parking lot. So these are different things to look out for the electrical systems. And, I would like to send out this presentation to everybody if they would like at the, if you request it or if I'm allowed to. And that's it. Just basically get your engineer or your reserve study provider to provide you with a preventive maintenance plan. And that's it. Just one last thing. And I'm so sorry if it doesn't work, but I
was telling you about.
Peggy, we hear you speaking. You might want to mute. Chris, also before you hop off, I do have several questions in the Q&A. Please go ahead, and then we'll go to questions.
I understand, but look, and I apologize if I get kicked off, but I really, really, at this point right now, after that presentation and all the work I put in for that, the intro, I gotta try it one more time. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me if I get off.
I vote for that.
Yeah, I agree. Oh, we see it, Chris. No volume. Chris, I don't think we have it going. Peggy, you're muted.
Okay, I was just waiting for him. But anyway, maybe we can send it around.
Yeah, just forget. You know what? Forget about it. I'm so sorry.
All right, Peggy, do you want to just go through the last questions?
I'm sorry, what?
Do you want me to just go through these last questions before we conclude?
Yes, I advertised till 2 p.m. So.
Okay. Well, I thought it was 1:30. That's why I was trying to wrap it up at the end. Sorry.
Oh, you're fine, Chris. Let me give you the questions that our audience has asked. So, These are just in the order that they were asked in, and they may or may not be something you can answer, but we'll take them one at a time. So we have a participant who said that they're interested in whether a client rep in a renovation or restoration of a clubhouse is obligated to bring a, in quotes, build to budget in at close to estimates. So I think what their person is asking here is essentially they have a client rep, they're doing a clubhouse restoration, and they want to know if there's an obligation for them to bring in their budget close to what the estimates were that they were given. Not sure that's a question you can really answer, Chris.
I'm not sure. I don't really understand the question very well.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next. Another participant asked that they have had a SIRS study done and completed, and they want to know if they are required to follow the reserve recommendations exactly, or can they change that recommendations prior to 2025 budget. They said, can we BOD? I'm not sure what BOD means.
Board of Directors.
Oh, okay. So can the board essentially change the recommendations that are in the SIRS study prior to the 2025 budget?
Well, the answer is that, from my understanding, it depends on the jurisdiction, because some jurisdictions require the SIRS report, right? But most don't. From my understanding, with the Bradley and Pizzo and all the senators and everybody, my understanding is that this does not have to be submitted to the state or anybody, that it's for reference only. You could adjust it. I would say short answer is yes, because one, that the only problem you're going to face if it's not done, say if somebody buys a unit in a condo in like February of 2025, correct? And then they request the SIRS. If there's no SIRS or no intent to get a SIRS done, that's when there's an issue. That is when there's an issue. Like, they're not going to look into your bank account. Of course, everything here is just my opinion, but they're not going to look into the bank accounts of these different associations to ensure they have the money. Say, for instance, if the reserve study states you have to have $1 million at the end of year one, and you have like $500,000 at the end of year one, no one's really gonna come after you. No one's gonna look and verify that you have the funds that the reserve study states. So I would say yes, you can modify it to make sense, but I would get the approval and direction from your engineer or reserve study personnel.
Okay, next question. Do you think a TV cable outside of the building on the wall, so essentially it's a 2-story building and there's a TV cable that's hanging down and it's not well protected from the rain, it has loose pins on the wall, could that be causing leaking water inside of the unit?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely, it can be. You really want to have an electrician out there to run that in some conduit and patch around the hole and just open it up, patch it, use some depends on what it is, some watertight or some stucco over it, or depending on what the substrate is. But yes, absolutely, I would say yes, absolutely, that could be a cause for the penetration of water.
Okay, now this is sort of a two-part. I'm going to combine two questions in one here. This has to do with the exterior walls, again, of the community. And the question is additional sealing or waterproofing required on properly painted external walls? And there was another question of what was the name of the additive that that penetrates to protect exterior walls?
Well, the one that I mentioned, one material that impregnates concrete after it's poured and curing. This has to be done when the concrete is freshly poured and curing. Sika, SIKA, Ferrogard, FERROGARD 903, that helps protect the reinforcement even further. It's like it impregnates the concrete and helps further protect whatever. And you should still put anti-corrosion on your rebar. This is added protection. But the part about the wall, the exterior wall, it's really on a case-by-case basis. It's using your best judgment. You know, you want to, of course, protect, kind of contrary to what I said before, you do want to protect those walls, because once they, like, you know, water starts getting into them and starts infiltrating, like the cracks, the you know, from the top, if it starts really getting into there, it could still, depending on what the material is, if it's like a stem wall or you know, on footer, or just the CMU wall with the, you know, concrete columns every 10 feet, you really should want to protect it and paint it and seal it as needed.
Okay, perfect. Hang on, there's some more coming in. Okay, Cliff, this is the question regarding the electrical that we were talking about, and I had mentioned how the commercial property insurers are looking at the panels to make sure that they comply with proper code compliance, and some of the older panels are cause for insurance companies to drop communities from coverage. And the question is being asked, is that the common area only or also privately owned units? And the answer would be, it depends on the insurance company and what the requirements are. It would be a good idea, and not to step on toes, Chris, and you can answer this directly as well, but it would certainly be a good idea if you know you have much older panels to start thinking about and budgeting for replacing them, not only in the common areas, but also in the individual units. As Chris mentioned, a lot of the fire risk is actually at the branch into the units, not as much in the common area.
Oh, that was a pretty good answer. Thank you.
Okay. Another question coming in. Do you have a recommendation as to what is the best way to waterproof balconies?
It really depends. What I would say, though, also one big thing is that a lot of communities don't, I don't know, this is definitely related, I feel. A lot of communities actually don't allow tile or other type of coverings on their balconies, because they cause, you know, issues, structural issues by, you know, water getting trapped underneath there. A lot of things. A lot of people do have coverings on, like, tile or, you know, whatever else they put on their balconies. But it depends on the building. It really depends on you know, there's different manufacturers, different products of different manufacturers. You know, there's really you know, Tremco, one of the you know, sponsors from today, they have some great products for different types of waterproofing systems. And also have to deal with cost as well. There's like the Cadillac of waterproofing systems, and there's like the Pinto of waterproofing systems that you could really go in level in there. So if you want the bare minimum that would still do the function, there's certain waterproofings. But if you want like the Cadillac, nice, beautiful finish, you know, very functional as well, there's different products. So there's different levels of products you could use depending on the building, depending on the budget.
Okay. This is the last question I have at the moment. Someone is asking if they receive a certificate for the webinar, or how does that work? And so I'll leave that for Peggy. One more question just popped in for Chris. What about Sherman-Williams Surecrete for balconies? It's in parenthesis. I assume that's the name of the product. Surecrete.
You know what? I'm not too familiar with that product. I gotta be honest. Is that supposed to be like a waterproofing, or is that like a floor paint? Or I could look that up.
I don't know, but I will just say that again.
Research.
I would turn to, if you have, you know, your paint vendor, or if not, we have vendors. He said yes, but I would suggest you reach out to your vendor or reach out to an expert in the waterproofing field. We have a couple on our webinar today as sponsors. You'll be getting their information. Feel free to ask them those questions. I can speak for myself and probably for most of the vendors that have been on here, the sponsors. We're only too happy to answer your questions. We don't necessarily expect that means you're going to do business with us, but we certainly are happy to answer your questions and know that we've given you the best advice we can. So please reach out to us if we can help. Hang on, another question is coming in. Oh, this is for the Sherwin-Williams rep, if they're available. I had a waterproofing. I don't know if our vendor who, Sherwin-Williams vendor is still on.
Is he?
No.
Okay.
I just want to say that I'm going to be sending out all the Q&A questions to all the vendors, and whoever it applies to, of course, they would respond. So, but if Chris, you think you want to respond also, just go on and do it. You don't have to ask the Sherwin-Williams guy, just
right.
respond.
Well, could you repeat that last question?
Yes. I had a waterproofing and painting project, and it has been at least 3 times that they have had to redo our parapet walls because of bubbling. Could there be an issue with the paint?
The majority of paint, this is given. The majority of issues with paint has to do with the application and the surface application. If the surface, the substrate is not properly cleaned, that is 9 times out of 10, that's where you're going to find the issue. Basically, it's all about cleaning the substrate. And if you go over a clean substrate that's over another substrate that is deteriorated, so if you have say deteriorated concrete and you have stucco over it, that's in good condition, then you have paint over that, and you go over that, the substrate, if it's not in good condition, it's going to fail, right? So that's the reason. So 9 times out of 10, it's the application. So that issue with the blistering and the issue they have there, I would guarantee it that it has to do with the actual application, and the applicator does that job, not with the product.
Okay, thank you, Chris. Peggy, these are for you. People are simply asking if they'll receive a certificate for the continuing education or how they'll get credit. And and they're also asking if a copy of the presentation slides themselves will be provided in addition to the video recording.
Okay, are we ready to close, Chris?
Yeah, I'm good. Okay.
All right, so let me address all this, Daniel. Thank you. And thank everyone in the audience for joining in today and choosing our webinar. Great information, Christopher, very well prepared. I appreciate that. First of all, to answer some of the questions, don't misunderstand the credit for the board certifications versus credit for the property managers called CAMs. They are 2 separate law changes that apply to 2 separate groups. Even though you're attending the CAM classes, none of this applies to your board new requirements for your certifications effective July 1st. The board certification is specifically for attorneys, giving you education on how to read your documents, know what to look for in your documents. It's all about board fiduciary responsibilities and what you need to know as a board member executing anything for anything, budgets, activities, and so on, and how to read your documents correctly. So that is a separate certification. And again, I will be having 2 or 3 with different attorneys trying to secure a Spanish attorney, as well as a couple others in different areas. So look for those flyers. And the next thing that I want to say is the upcoming webinars and trade shows where you can get a lot of education classes there. And I'm hoping that at one of these or all of these trade shows, someone will be giving these board education trainings. So be sure and look on the website. So my next webinar is September 20th, just to let you know. And I had something planned called the Attorney Olympics. That is going to be moved to January because all the attorneys seem to be having a lot of things in litigation that they can't actually get to this particular webinar. So I will have a webinar on the 20th. I'm not sure what it is yet. October 9th, we have the Palm Beach County Convention Center hosting the HOA and Condo Expo. The next one is October 15th. That's the Broward County Convention Center. They're hosting the Condo HOA Expo. And on October 25th, if you're on the West Coast, there's going to be another expo for condos and HOAs in Naples. So past that, that's all I know at this time. I appreciate everybody coming. Thank you, Chris. Thank you, sponsors. And thank you, IT support, Vinteum.
Thank you, Peggy.
Thank you. Have a great week. Bye-bye.
Thank you all.
Thank you.